The council chamber did not resemble anything humanity would have built. It was not a room so much as a controlled impossibility, an immense hollow suspended in orbit around a dying blue giant, its walls shifting in slow, deliberate gradients of light and matter. Gravity existed only where it was permitted. Atmosphere clung in invisible pockets tailored to species that required it. Entire sections of the chamber floated, rotated, or refracted, depending on the biology of those who occupied them. At its center stood a single, unmoving platform. Elias Varon resisted the urge to look up. He had been warned about that. The first time a human delegate entered the chamber decades ago, they had stared too long, at the scale, at the impossible geometries, and collapsed under the quiet pressure of it. Not physical pressure. Something subtler. The overwhelming certainty that this place had existed long before humanity, and would continue long after. Elias kept his eyes level. Forward. Controlled. Human. His platform was simple. Solid. Gravity-bound. Designed for comfort, but not importance. Around him, tiers of alien presence curved in a vast amphitheater, each section adapted to its occupant. A lattice of crystalline entities shimmered to his left, refracting the dying star's light into shifting patterns. Across from them, a cluster of semi-fluid beings pulsed within hovering containment fields, their forms folding and unfolding like slow tides. Farther still, shapes that defied easy description watched without moving at all. Hundreds of civilizations. Watching one man. Waiting to decide the fate of his species. The silence deepened, not absence of sound, but the removal of distraction. Every whisper, every mechanical hum, every flicker of movement faded until only intent remained. Then something shifted. Not in space. In attention. The center of the chamber reoriented, subtly but unmistakably, toward a presence that had not moved. High Arbiter Zyril. Elias had studied every available record of the Thren Dominion. It hadn't helped. Zyril did not dominate the chamber through size or spectacle. Its form was restrained, precise, an arrangement of smooth, angular surfaces that reflected no light and cast no shadow. It seemed less like a body and more like a decision made visible. When it spoke, the sound did not travel. It arrived. The trial of Earth is now in session. No echo followed. The words simply existed, complete and unquestionable. Elias drew a slow breath. This was it. A faint shimmer spread outward from Zyril, and the chamber responded. Data constructs unfolded in midair, vast, layered projections that surrounded Elias without touching him. Images formed, sharpened, and locked into place. Earth. Not as he knew it, but as it had been judged. Cities burning under nuclear fire. Borders shifting in rapid succession. Fleets clashing in orbital engagements, human vessels cutting through formations with aggressive precision. Colonies blooming across distant systems, expanding faster than any Accord model predicted. History condensed into accusation. Species designation human. Zyril continued. Origin soul system. Time since faster than light capability, 83 standard cycles. The images shifted again. Human ships entering foreign conflicts. Breaking formations. Extracting civilians. Disrupting engagements that had followed carefully maintained balances for centuries. Primary charges are as follows. Each word arrived with measured clarity. Persistent internal instability. A flash of Earth's wars. Unregulated territorial expansion. New worlds marked in rapid succession. Unauthorized interference in external sovereign conflicts. A Ketheri war cluster unraveling as human vessels forced to cease fire. The projections froze. The chamber absorbed them. Elias felt it, not hostility exactly, but calculation. Hundreds of minds, each measuring humanity against their own definitions of acceptable risk. Zyril's voice did not change. Collectively, these behaviors indicate a pattern of unpredictability incompatible with sustained interstellar equilibrium. There it was. Not anger. Not fear. Assessment. Elias let the silence stretch. Interrupting now would be a mistake. He had learned that much. Across the chamber, subtle movements rippled. A crystalline delegate fractured its light into sharper angles. One of the fluid entities compressed inward, its surface tightening. Somewhere in the upper tiers, a structure folded in on itself, as if reconsidering its own geometry. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The evidence was doing it for them. Zyril turned, if the slight reorientation of its form could be called turning. "Ambassador Elias Varen," it said. "You will respond." Every gaze settled on him. Elias finally lifted his eyes. Not to the highest tiers. Not to the impossible distances. Just forward. He clasped his hands behind his back to keep them steady. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, "You're correct." The chamber did not react immediately. That, more than anything, told him he had their attention. Elias' continued, voice even. "Everything you've shown. The wars. The expansion. The interventions." He paused, just long enough to let the weight of it settle. "All of it happened." A faint shift passed through the chamber, something like recalibration. He took a step forward. "We are unstable," he said. "We are inconsistent. And yes, sometimes we act without permission." He met the empty surface that was Zyril. "But you're asking the wrong question." That drew something. Not sound. Not movement. Focus. Elias held it. "You're asking whether we are dangerous." He let the silence sharpen. "We are." No hesitation. No apology. "And we always have been." For the first time, the chamber felt smaller. Elias drew in a breath, steady and controlled. "The difference is," he said, "we survived it." The stillness that followed was no longer neutral. It was waiting. Zyril did not respond immediately. When it did, its voice remained perfectly measured. "Assertion acknowledged," it said. "Proceeding to verification." The projections around Elias shifted again, dissolving into new configurations. Testimonies. Witnesses. The real trial was about to begin. And for the first time since entering the chamber, Elias felt the edge of something he had been holding back. Not fear. Resolve. The chamber shifted again, not physically but in purpose. The projections surrounding Elias collapsed into a single axis of focus. Where there had been history, there would now be judgment through others. "Testimony sequence initiated," Zyril announced. A section of the chamber brightened, drawing attention to a cluster unlike the rest. The HFY War cluster did not occupy a single body. It existed as a formation, multiple entities linked through threads of luminous energy, moving in synchronized precision. Each node pulsed with intent, not individuality. When it spoke, the voices overlapped in perfect alignment. Human interference recorded. Conflict designation, HFY Internal Resolution Cycle 77. A projection unfolded, two vast HFY fleets locked in patterned combat. Movements were deliberate, losses calculated, formations symmetrical. Then came the disruption. Human ships tore into the battlefield, not in formation but in motion, erratic, adaptive. They broke lines, jammed signals, extracted vessels mid-engagement. The symmetry collapsed. "Our conflict was contained," the HFY stated. "Parameters were maintained. Human intervention introduced imbalance." Elias watched the projection, jaw set. "Casualties before intervention?" he asked. A pause. Brief but noticeable. "Within acceptable thresholds." "How many?" "Numerical value irrelevant to outcome." Elias stepped forward slightly. "Not to us." The HFY formation flickered, as if recalculating. "Human perspective prioritizes individual survival over systemic stability," it replied. Elias didn't argue. He let the statement stand. "That's correct." A ripple moved through the chamber, subtle, but present. The projection faded. Another presence came forward. The Vol Expanse Coalition appeared as a rigid, geometric construct, layered plates of metallic structure sliding over one another with precise alignment. Their communication came in segmented bursts, each phrase perfectly measured. Violation of Accord Protocol documented. The VAL representative began. Event: evacuation of civilian population during sanctioned conflict. The scene formed: a planet under siege, infrastructure collapsing in slow, inevitable sequence. Human vessels descended through orbital fire, ignoring established corridors, ignoring command hierarchies. They disrupted evacuation order. The VAL continued. Resource allocation destabilized. Strategic timelines compromised. Elias exhaled slowly. Those civilians would have died. Losses were projected. The VAL replied. Managed within acceptable deviation. Managed. Elias repeated, quieter now. The VAL construct shifted, plates realigning. Protocol exists to preserve long-term equilibrium. Elias met it head-on. And what preserves the people living in it? No immediate answer. The chamber held the silence longer this time. Then the projection dissolved. For a moment, nothing replaced it. Elias felt it, the weight of what had been presented. To the Council, humanity was not malicious. That would have been simpler. It was inconsistent. That was worse. Cyril spoke again. Final testimony. A smaller section illuminated, almost overlooked compared to the others. The presence that emerged was fragile, its form thin and semi-translucent, like something unfinished. The Lyran remnant. They hesitated before speaking, their voice soft but clear. We request acknowledgement, they said. Granted, Zyro replied. A new projection formed. A dying system, its star collapsing, radiation tearing through orbiting worlds. No fleets. No defenses. No strategic value. No intervention was scheduled. The Lyran continued. Our extinction was categorized as non-disruptive. The words landed harder than any accusation. Then movement. Human ships, few in number, unremarkable compared to the great fleets shown earlier, entered the system. They deployed shielding arrays, redirected power, evacuated populations in waves. They arrived without summons, the Lyran said. Without obligation. Elias didn't move. They lost vessels, the Lyran added. They remained. The projection lingered on a final image, a human ship, crippled, holding position as transports escaped behind it. We persist because of them. The chamber changed. Not visibly. Not dramatically. But the uniform certainty that had filled it since the trial began fractured, just slightly. The Lyran withdrew, their presence dimming. No one spoke. Cyril broke the silence. All testimonies demonstrate a consistent variable, it said. Human action deviates from predictive models. Its tone did not shift, but the meaning sharpened. Inconsistency introduces instability. Instability escalates towards systemic failure. Elias let out a quiet breath. There it was again. Not condemnation. Calculation. He looked across the chamber, seeing it now for what it truly was, not a court deciding guilt, but a system assessing risk. Ambassador, Zyro continued, do you contest the pattern presented? Elias considered the question carefully. Then he shook his head once. No. A faint stir moved through the delegates. He took a step forward, voice steady. But you're measuring us like we're supposed to behave the same way every time. Zyro remained still. We don't, Elias said. That's the point. The chamber held that thought, turning it over from 100 perspectives at once. Zyro responded without delay. Then the concern is validated. The projections vanished completely, leaving only the vast emptiness of the chamber, and the weight of what came next. Proceeding to projection analysis, Zyro announced. The trial was no longer about what humanity had done. It was about what it might do. Elias felt that shift settle in. And he knew, with quiet certainty, that the next phase would be harder to survive than anything that had come before. The chamber dimmed, not into darkness, but into focus. What replaced the testimonies was larger, colder, and far more decisive. Projection analysis initiated, Cyril stated. The space around Elias filled again, but this time the images were not memories, They were possibilities. A galaxy unfolded. Lines of influence spread like fractures through star systems. Human colonies appeared first as scattered points, then as networks, then as something denser, interconnected, adaptive, growing faster than any model should allow. Scenario Set 1. Zyril continued. Expansion trajectory. Elias watched human fleets move across the projection. Not in uniform patterns, but in shifting clusters, reactive, opportunistic. Trade routes formed, then rerouted. Alliances appeared, dissolved, reformed. Within 3 centuries, Zyril said, humanity exceeds localized influence thresholds across 17 regions. The projection zoomed outward. Established powers, older, larger civilizations, shifted in response. Some retreated. Others consolidated. Result: systemic imbalance. The image froze. It changed again. Scenario Set 2, Zyril said. This time, conflict. An isolated dispute between 2 non-human powers escalated. Human vessels entered, not as aggressors, but as variables. Their actions disrupted command structures, altered outcomes. One side gained advantage it had not earned. The other collapsed faster than predicted. Intervention without alignment, Zyril explained. Outcome variance increases by 84%. The chamber absorbed that number. Elias kept his expression still, but his thoughts tightened. He recognized the pattern, not because it was foreign, but because it was familiar. Humans didn't follow systems. They reacted to them. The projection shifted again. Scenario Set 3. This one stretched further. Humanity at scale. Colonies thriving, technology advancing, influence spreading beyond immediate borders. Not through conquest, but through presence. Systems began to reorganize around them, not by force, but by necessity. They do not stabilize, Zyril said. They propagate change. The words carried more weight than any accusation so far. Elias felt it. This was the core of it. Not what humans had done. What they caused. The projection faded slightly, then sharpened into a final configuration. Composite outcome, Zyril announced. All scenarios merged. The result was not destruction. It was transformation. The accord itself, its carefully balanced structure, shifted under the influence of one variable that refused to settle. Borders blurred. Protocols bent. Long-standing equilibriums dissolved, replaced by something less predictable. Conclusion, Zyril said. Humanity introduces persistent deviation. Deviation at this scale results in systemic uncertainty. Silence followed. It wasn't the silence of hesitation. It was the silence of conclusion forming. Elias exhaled slowly. A voice emerged from the upper tiers, sharp, deliberate. Ambassador, it said. Can your species guarantee containment of this deviation? Elias didn't look up. He didn't need to. The question was simple. The answer wasn't. He could lie. Offer assurances. Frame humanity as controllable, manageable, safe. It would be wrong. No, he said. The word landed heavier than anything before it. A shift moved through the chamber, decisive this time. Not hostility, but confirmation. A missing piece locking into place. Zyril did not react immediately. When a system cannot regulate its own variance, it said at last, external correction becomes necessary. Elias felt the edge of it now. Not pressure. Finality. He closed his eyes for a brief moment. Not to escape, but to think. Images surfaced, unbidden, sharp. Earth, fractured by conflict yet rebuilding. Cities burned, then rebuilt stronger. People divided, then choosing, again and again, to come back together. Humans didn't eliminate instability. They endured it. That was the difference. He opened his eyes. The chamber remained unchanged, but his understanding shifted. They weren't afraid of destruction. They were afraid of unpredictability. And for them, the two were the same. Zyril's voice cut through his thoughts. The probability of destabilization exceeds acceptable thresholds, it said. Recommendation pending. Pending. Not decided. Not yet. Elias straightened slightly. There was still space. Small. Narrow. But real. High Arbiter, he said. The chamber stilled again, not because of the words, but because of the timing. He had not been prompted. Zyril turned its attention toward him. State your intent. Elias met it evenly. I request final statement rights. A pause. Not long, but deliberate. Granted, Zyril replied. The projections dissolved completely, leaving Elias alone again at the center of the vast chamber. No distractions now. No images. Just him, and every decision that had led to this moment. He felt the weight of it settle, not as fear, but as clarity. They had shown him the future as they understood it. Now he had to show them something they didn't. Choice. Elias drew in a steady breath. He didn't rush. Didn't fill the silence. He let it build, let every presence in the chamber lean into the absence of sound. Then he spoke. And this time, it wouldn't be a response. It would be the argument that decided everything. The chamber waited. No projections. No data. No voices layered over one another. Just stillness shaped by expectation. Elias stood alone at the center, aware that every species present had already reached a conclusion. He wasn't here to change minds easily. He was here to challenge the way they thought. He let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Then he spoke. You're right to be concerned. The words carried without force, but they held. You've measured us accurately. We expand quickly. We intervene without permission. We don't behave the same way twice. He paused, letting the truth settle instead of resisting it. You're not wrong about what we are. A faint shift moved through the chamber, attention tightening, not loosening. Elias stepped forward, just once. But you've misunderstood why. That landed. Across the tiers, subtle reactions flickered, structures adjusting, light patterns sharpening, fluid forms tightening in their containment fields. Zyril remained still. Explain, it said. Elias nodded slightly. You built stability by removing variation, he began. At some point in your development, you eliminated unpredictability. You optimized behavior, standardized response, reduced deviation until your systems became reliable. He glanced across the chamber. It worked. No challenge there. No need. Your civilizations endure because they don't surprise themselves. He let that idea sit. Humans tried that too, he continued. We built systems. Laws. Protocols. We tried to make ourselves predictable. A faint breath escaped him, almost a memory. It never held. The chamber listened, not to the words alone, but to the certainty behind them. We argue. We disagree. We break our own rules. His voice remained even, controlled. And then we change them. A pause. Not once. Not cleanly. Constantly. Zyril's voice entered, precise as ever. Instability. Elias met it. Adaptation. The word lingered. He didn't rush to fill the space after it. You see inconsistency as failure, he said. We see it as process. A ripple moved outward, small, but undeniable. Elias pressed forward. When we intervened in those conflicts, we didn't follow your models because we weren't built on them. His gaze stayed level. We didn't calculate acceptable losses. We reacted to what we saw. The result was disruption. Zyril replied. Yes, Elias said. And sometimes that disruption saved lives. No embellishment. No dramatics. Just fact. You're afraid of what happens when that scales, he continued. You're afraid that if we keep expanding, we'll reshape everything around us. He let that sit for a heartbeat. You're right again. This time, the reaction was stronger, not visible, but felt. A tightening of collective focus. Elias didn't back away from it. We will change things, he said. We already have. He lifted his chin slightly. But you're treating that as inevitable chaos. Like we don't have control over it. His voice sharpened, not louder, just clearer. That's where you're wrong. The chamber stilled completely. Elias drew in a breath steady. We are not bound to a fixed state, he said. We don't become one version of ourselves and stay there. He took another step forward, closing the distance between himself and the unseen weight of the council. We choose. The word cut clean. Not perfectly. Not always wisely. But deliberately. He let that truth stand on its own. You ran projections, Elias continued. You mapped out what we might become. A faint motion of his hand, almost dismissive. You're missing the part where we decide. Zyro responded immediately. Choice does not eliminate probability. No, Elias agreed. But it changes it. That was the hinge. Elias held the moment, then leaned into it. You're looking for guarantees, he said. Certainty. Assurance that we won't become a threat. His expression didn't shift. I can't give you that. Silence followed, heavier this time, edged with expectation of finality. He didn't let it settle into judgment. But neither can any species here, he added. That drew a reaction. Subtle, but real. You assume your stability makes you safe, Elias said. That because you don't change, you won't become something dangerous. He shook his head once. It just means you won't see it coming if you do. The idea moved through the chamber like a fracture line. Zyro did not interrupt. Elias pressed the advantage. We're not predictable, he said. That's true. But we're also the only ones here who constantly question what we are. His voice softened, not weaker, but grounded. We don't trust ourselves to stay the same. So we don't. A long pause. Then, quietly. That's why we survive. The chamber held that. Turned it. Measured it. Elias let the silence stretch again, but this time it felt different. Not empty. Active. Finally, Zyro spoke. Deliberation will proceed. No immediate verdict. But not dismissal. The chamber shifted, attention dispersing, internal processes unfolding across hundreds of minds. Elias stood still, letting the weight of what he had said settle where it would. Time passed, seconds or something longer. Then the focus returned. Zyro addressed the assembly. Consensus incomplete, it said. Majority threshold reached. A fraction of a pause. Humanity will not be eradicated. The words landed with controlled impact. Conditional integration authorized. Monitoring protocols enforced. Not acceptance. Not rejection. Something in between. Elias exhaled, slow and measured. Around him, reactions unfolded, some distant, some curious, some still guarded. Zyro turned its attention back to him. You remain an anomaly, it said. Elias allowed the smallest trace of a response. We always have. No defiance. No pride. Just truth. The chamber began to shift again, its purpose fulfilled. As the gathered civilizations turned back to their own concerns, Elias looked out, not at them, but beyond, toward the distant light of the dying star. Humanity had not been cleared. It had been acknowledged. And that was enough. For now.